Okay, so we're back, and we just had a wonderful discussion. Unfortunately, there was no audio for no real reason that I could figure out, but we should be good to go now, as I do see the audio bars on my program. Uh, and we're going to get right to the NHL trade deadline now. We were talking about the Knicks and the difference between, I guess, what they did, which was a lot of nothing, and definitely in contrast to the NHL deadline, which is a lot more active generally. That's a fair statement, right? I mean, it's already been crazy. How come you think the NHL deadline so much more happens than what we're accustomed to in the NBA?
Well, I mean, the NHL, there are so many different teams with so many different cap needs. I think the salary cap era of the NHL has really made trade deadline season that much more interesting because you have plenty of teams that are trying to make sure they can stay under the cap, that they can make sure that they can make, you know, keep all of the players that they need to keep. One of the teams that I look to at this point is the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have made a couple of deals in the last day, or that are really salvaging what could have been a really disastrous salary cap situation for them. They have three unbelievably talented players coming up with contracts expiring this summer. They're going to be restricted free agents. That's Tyler Johnson, Andre Palat, and Jonathan Drouin. Those are three guys
Yeah.
that aside from Steven Stamkos, Alex Killorn, Nikita Kucherov, make up part of the core of that team. And they were going into it with minimal cap space, certainly not enough to sign three players of that caliber. So what they've done over the past couple days, with trading Ben Bishop and a pick to the Los Angeles Kings yesterday, and with trading Brian Boyle to the Toronto Maple Leafs today, is they've alleviated some of their cap issues, where now they have a lot of space to be able to keep signing those, to be able to sign those three guys. Bishop, just get that Bishop deal itself cleared their cap space next year to 12 million, which would have been, manageable to be able to get those guys. But now with Boyle's contract off the books, they are more than set to be able to re-sign those three guys this summer. So that's why I think in the modern era, the salary cap has really made a difference. And this year, the expansion draft is also playing a lot into this as well. You have that's also why, partially probably, why the Ben Bishop deal happened, because the Lightning were in a conundrum where they had a young up and coming goaltender in Andrei Vasilevsky, who is going to be the number one guy there now, no
Yeah.
question about it. He was ready. He showed last year in the playoffs when he had to play. He was ready for it,
Right.
and they would have had to either protect him or protect Bishop for the expansion draft, because you only protect one goalie, and they would have had to lose one of them. And through this trade, they get something back from them. They get Budai, Cernak, and a couple of picks.
Yeah, that's really interesting because that covered two questions that I was going to ask a little later. One, what role will the expansion draft play in this deadline? So I guess teams, the Lightning show it there because that was a trade that without the expansion draft, you're absolutely right. You would have sat there scratching your head, and it was obviously with. I guess more puzzling for the Kings because they already have Jonathan Quick, but for the Lightning, they felt confident that they would have lost either Vasilevsky or Bishop, whoever they didn't protect, to the Las Vegas Knights. Are we going to see a lot of teams? I mean, as if NHL GMs don't have enough to keep track of already. Do you think we're going to see a lot of teams kind of taking a look at who they could be protecting, and if there's someone who's a no-brainer, who they are really confident the Vegas Knights are going to basically take right out from under them, it's better off just dealing those guys so you can get something back?
I think that'll absolutely factor into that. There's no question about it. Teams are looking to see how they will, how they're going to be able to protect these players. You've got to protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie, or 8 skaters and a goalie. And the reality is that some teams, every team is going to lose one player, but some teams are going to lose players that they really like, that they are really big players. They're really factor into their team a lot. And
Yeah.
The goaltending situations are especially interesting. It seems like the Lightning have solved theirs. Who knows what's going to happen in Pittsburgh with Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray, because they could elect to trade one of them to try and get something for him, and then just protect either Murray or Fleury, whichever one remains. If they're going to trade anyone, they're going to trade Fleury, I would think. But there's going to be some teams where, but the expansion draft, on the other hand, can also factor in the opposite direction, where if you're going to trade some guys, and you're going, let's say a team trades for a guy like Matt Duchene, who would be a huge addition to any team contending right now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's a good enough player that maybe he would most definitely take up one of those 7 forward spots or 8 skaters spots in the expansion draft, and then therefore you'd have to lose one of the other guys. So in some ways it makes for more interesting trades, but on the other hand, it might make some trades a little more difficult, because that he's going to take up one of those expansion spots for a player that you would have wanted to protect otherwise.
Right. And so for the Rangers, Ranta obviously is probably one of the candidates at this point for the Vegas Knights at the goaltender position, especially after that Tampa Bay Lightning trade. And also Michael Grabner's been someone that Ranger fans have expressed concerns about. Obviously, he's their leading scorer, and if you look at the roster, that's someone who could be hard to protect. So how do you think the upcoming expansion draft can affect the Rangers?
Well, I think it might. I think that the Grabner situation is especially intriguing, because if you're, Grabner is one of the guys that they brought in this summer on a very low cost contract, and then all of a sudden has been absolutely unbelievable. Like he has been absolutely. It's mind blowing how good he's been. I think it's making a lot of Leafs fans and Islanders fans cringe a little bit at how well he's doing compared to his past few seasons. But that's going to be an interesting scenario, because on one hand, I would think out there in the NHL right now, there's some team either on the cusp of a playoff spot or trying to move up in the playoff standings that would pay a lot to get Michael Grabner on their team at the trade deadline. There are undoubtedly teams that would take a guy like Michael Grabner, and probably, quite honestly, overpay for him based on what his true value is, not just this season. So I think overall that's going to be a very interesting scenario for the Rangers this season, because but granted, at forward they definitely have a lot of flexibility as to who they can protect. At defenseman, not so much, because you have Mark Stahl and Dan Girardi on no movement clauses, so they have to count towards the protected list no matter what. They unless you can get them to waive it, they are going to be one of those protected. And Rick Nash is in the same boat for forwards. But other than that, you have 6 other forwards that you have to find a way to protect. And I think, Stepan Kreider, Zuccarello, JT Miller, and maybe Kevin Hayes get thrown in there. But then, or probably Mika Zibanejad might get thrown in there over one of them. But there are a lot of guys you have to protect. And I think, Grabner in most scenarios right now, I can't see the Rangers protecting Michael Grabner over, let's say, over Matt Zuccarello, over Mika Zibanejad, over Kevin Hayes, over Miller, or over Stepan. I just don't see that happening, especially because you don't know what his value is going to do once next season. He's 29 years old. He's on a little over $1.5 million contract this year. He would definitely be a good guy to trade when his value is high. He's been incredible for the lineup. It depends on what you get back for him, but I would think that based on how unbelievably well he's played this year, a team will quite honestly overpay for his services at the deadline.
Yeah, they may overpay, but once again, and the Grabner situation certainly, and the expansion draft as a whole, certainly adds a whole nother layer to this trade deadline. But this is also a more complicated deadline for the Rangers in other respects, because I feel like in past years it's been, okay, if you can make if you're the Rangers and you can make a win now trade, if you can improve the team now and even give up some chips for the future, then that's a deal that the Rangers were willing to make. But this year, as time goes by, that's not so clear. So, another layer is, do you want to hold on to Grabner, who you think, obviously he's been your leading scorer, so will you take a hit this year if you make a deal like that? And really, are you buyers or sellers? Not so much sellers, because they're not going to sell. they're they're a top 6 team in the NHL. I think they're sixth in points in the NHL, if I'm not mistaken. Well into the playoffs, even though they're in the 4th spot in the Metropolitan. But it's interesting, right? Because you don't know, if you're the Rangers, are you willing to sacrifice for the future anymore? Are you willing to make win now trades, or do you really want to be weary of those kind of trades at this point?
I mean, how many times we said that the Rangers are a big trade away from being contenders? I mean, you saw that after the Rick Nash trade. You saw that certainly after the Keith Yandle trade. I mean, how many times are we gonna say that about this team?
Yeah.
I think this year more than any other year. In other years, I think maybe that was probably the case, but I think this year, I don't think that any of that is really necessary. I mean, if you look at what this team is right now, this is a team that that can produce offense that like I've never seen a Rangers team before. They have 4 lines of speedy, incredibly offensively talented players. You don't see Tanner Glass getting ice time. You don't see, back when Moore was getting ice time on those bottom units. You see 4 lines of pure scoring talent, and that's what you really need to win in the NHL nowadays. Their defense, nobody really talks about it this year because their offense is doing so well, but the defense really hasn't improved that much. Girardi's still sluggish on the ice. McDonough's still holding down the unit, but, and I like what they've done with Nick Holden and Adam Clendening whenever he gets playing time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the defense is still more or less what it was. And I think, if you're going to improve in any area, that's where you might think about it. I don't think there's going to be a deal out there for them to do it. Everyone talks about Kevin Shattenkirk, which I'm sure you'll want to talk about in a moment, so I'll hold off on that. But I think the other interesting thing with the forward, that this is a team that definitely can win in the playoffs if they can keep up their scoring talent. If they try to rely on their defense, they're going to get burned. But I think they're not in a position where they say, oh, they have to trade Michael Grabner or they'll lose him in the expansion draft. See, here's the thing that might be a savvier move for Jeff Gordon is that leading up to the expansion draft, what teams can do is they can make official deals with the Golden Knights to say, if we will send you this pick and this prospect and this player if you do not take this player that we exposed. So like in theory of this is going to be entirely hypothetical, they could say, hey, don't take Grabner and we'll send you a couple of draft picks and this prospect in Europe. That is a perfectly normal thing they can do. So that may be a more intriguing option for them than trying to trade Michael Grabner. If Grabner can fetch a really good deal right now that can maybe get you another roster player, then maybe you do that. But I think that's another intriguing option for Gordon and the Rangers.
That is intriguing. I've never heard that before, and that would be an official written trade that Vegas would be bound by.
Yeah, I mean, people kind of, it almost sounds like it's kind of this like backroom thing, but no,
right.
that is written into that is a legal thing. I mean, they can't granted they can't make it like a gentleman's agreement. They have to like put it in writing and actually make the trade, but those are allowed to happen.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, I agree with you. If the Rangers are going to improve one thing, it's definitely one extra piece on the defensive line. Shattenkirk, not the defensive line, or else I sound like I'm talking football. But on the defense, and yes, Kevin Shattenkirk. He's from New Rochelle. I feel like the last 3 trade deadlines we've been hearing about Kevin Shattenkirk and how he wants to be a Ranger. He is an excellent player. But first of all, there's news about Kevin Shattenkirk, which I'd like to know more about. You were telling me off air about that, and also, do you think that what would it take for the Rangers to get Kevin Shattenkirk, and might that be the best option for them at this point to become a contender?
Well, I think there are a lot of different factors that play into this deal here. First of all, that news we were talking about, there was a report from Brian Lawton of NHL Network that the Capitals and the Penguins are in the running to get Shattenkirk, which would be really interesting. It's an interesting deal for either of those teams. I'm not sure exactly what they would be going for there, but that's just something to look out for. It's not just the Rangers that would benefit from Shattenkirk's services. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But the other thing about Shattenkirk is that yes, the rumors are that he really wants to be. That he wants to be a Ranger. He was New York born. He wants to play there. That is what the reports say. That being said, does that make it less likely that the Rangers try a deal for him? Because Shattenkirk, so his contract is up. His contract's coming up at the end of the season, if I'm not mistaken, and he, this is the Carmelo Anthony conundrum all over again
Yeah.
for New York. I mean, question: do you make a blockbuster deal for him now? Because let me just tell you, St. Louis is not going to give him up for nothing. I think it would take it would take a similar package to what they did to what they gave for Keith Yandle to be able to get a guy like Kevin Shattenkirk. I think there's no question about that.
Right.
It would be a hefty deal for the Rangers to make, and I think if you saw the results of that trade, I mean, granted, Duclair is still in the minors right now. He's not, he not like it was last year, and so I mean. That's still. I think most people would say that trade did not work out great for the Rangers, considering Yandle is currently playing in Florida right now.
Yeah.
But I think the question is, do you try and trade it to guarantee that you land Shattenkirk now, or guarantee that no other team gets him, or do you roll the dice and wait for the deadline to pass? If he doesn't get moved, and he becomes a free agent in the offseason, if he really wants to play in New York, he would sign in the free agency.
Right.
The question is, do you gamble? Do you trade for him now just to make sure he doesn't get traded to any other team now, or do you wait until free agency? And even if he does get traded to another team, he could still sign with the Rangers in July because his contract is up. So I think that's the interesting thing, is that I think if he really wants to play in New York, and if the Rangers know he wants to play in New York, they'll stand pat and not trade for him.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. The cap situation isn't tremendous for the Rangers, to say the least, but I would say the same thing. For sure, it would seem like a better idea to try to sign him in free agency for me. So I agree with you. And the one guy who's kind of emerged recently, because the Rangers really were in the need of a sixth defenseman, Adam Clendening has looked pretty good recently. So maybe they have what they need in him. It's looking like, I'd be shocked if they traded for Shattenkirk. I do think, like you said, it would take a lot, and I don't think the Rangers are willing to make the same kind of deals that they were back then when they traded for Yandle. I just don't. So I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't quite see it happening in the way that people think, oh, they're just going to trade the boat for Shattenkirk like they did for Yandle. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think Jeff Gordon is much more cautious.
Yeah.
And than maybe the past, but I think he's very smart. He sees his lineup gelling like this, and I think like you said, Clendening has been playing really well. I think I'm glad that Vigneault is giving him some playing time, because he is really, really good whenever he's out there. He's been one of their top. Looking at the analytics, he's been one of their top defensemen this season on both ends of the ice. So I think the fact that he's playing very well, and that Nick Holden is playing a good season too, I think that totally reduces the need for him. Granted, there are still some glaring issues with this defensive core, like Dan Girardi, but overall they have the pieces to not have to trade for Shattenkirk right now.
Yeah, the strength of this team, I feel like they should definitely go with what they have, and that's the sense that I'm getting. I'm sensing that they're going to go with what they have, and what they have is really four lines that can score, and it's interesting to watch. The Rangers definitely have that modern fourth line, and you see the role of the enforcer completely diminishing, and for the most part, you see that completely around the league. What do you think of that? These fourth lines are scoring these days.
I think, Yeah, I mean, I do think in many cases that that in order to be able to truly win in the NHL, you have to have a wide range of scoring depth and be able to, there's nobody left in the NHL today that is just there to throw punches. You cannot win when you have a guy like that taking up space on the roster. With that being said, I think when a team goes cold, when a team does not have their scoring touch, I think adding some of that toughness and some of that on a fourth line is definitely something to look into. And I think you see that this year with what the Nashville Predators have done. I mean, they were pretty inconsistent through December and going into January, and then they bring in Cody McLeod who is known to throw the body around from the Avalanche. Then they bring in Vernon Fiddler from New Jersey, who started his career with the Predators, and they build a fourth line that, they might not be pure scorers. It's not a Rangers fourth line like they have with guys like Peary, and if Grabner's plays down there, he doesn't get to. But I think and then suddenly the team started finding their way. That line, when they built that line out, they had nowadays they have Vernon Fiddler there. Cody McLeod's on IR, but they have Vernon Fiddler playing down on that line. Harry Zolnarchuk's playing there net right now as well. Colton Sissons has been a bit of a scratch, but they've started, maybe use him a little bit as well. I think, having those guys there, the tougher guys, are definitely sparked the team a little bit. That line played really, really well to kind of jumpstart this team. McLeod had a goal in his first game. Zolnarchuk scored some. Brent Fiddler just scored the other night. So I think that having that line that can really deliver some toughness definitely helped jumpstart the team.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it didn't power the team to this win streak that they're on right now. That was Philip Forsberg out of his mind this week.
8 goals in 4 games?
Yep, 8 goals in 4 games. I mean, just being able to watch the 2 hat tricks and then in the last couple games, it's absolutely mind blowing. He is one of those players. I think when he's on the ice, you take notice that he is on the ice, and you see him every single game. Even if he doesn't score in a game, you see him make some just absolutely ridiculous move, make some incredible deke. Just play. He's so creative with the puck, and he's so smooth on his skates. He is one of those guys that you just take notice whenever he's on the ice.
Yeah. I used to be someone, going back to the fourth line a little bit, I used to be someone who would argue that enforcers, tough guys, fighters, actually made the game safer, and that they protected a guy like Philip Forsberg, who's your skill guy. And I mean, you know the deal, but this is what I used to tell people, that people can't go after these more skilled players who aren't as physical, who are smaller, who can't defend themselves as well, that these guys who fight, which, yes, is obviously unsafe, in the grand scheme of things, make the game safer. That's something that I subscribe to. It's interesting. I haven't really seen the game go off the rails by any means without the enforcers, however.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I think there's definitely something you have to make a distinction between an enforcer and just tough player.
Uh-huh.
I mean, their enforcers are the guys that are like, that are your Paul Bissonnets, your Rich Clunes, who just don't have a place in this league right now, who are just out there to fight. I do agree that fighting in some ways, acts as a self-enforcement mechanism and makes hockey safer, because, if you take a run at a star player, if you take a run at somebody and run them into the boards, you're going to get the snot beaten out of you the next shift, and that's just what happens, and it's a deterrent to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think, just having tough guys that can get in the trenches, can work the puck along the boards, can lay some hits on people and be tough out there on the ice, where the other team's down. There's definitely still somewhat of a place for that in this league. I do like what the Rangers have done with their 4 lines of pure, fast, speedy scoring talent, but I think in certain situations, like with the situation the Predators were in, getting a 4th line of guys that can really throw the body around, even in a unbelievably fast and offense-oriented system like what Peter Laviolette's is, I think that was incredibly beneficial for them.
Yeah, I want to ask you. So I'll move on to Nashville real quick. I just want to ask you about the environment in Nashville. They're a borderline playoff team, but as a hockey town, I'm just curious, really, how big are the Predators there? And Ken, obviously, it's Tennessee. They love barbecue. They love country music. They love SEC football. How do the Predators really draw? And what's the sense you get as Nashville as a hockey market?
Nashville is a hockey town. I think that there is zero negative question about that. Nashville is 1,000% a great hockey town. I think, the stat that exemplifies that the most this season is they have sold out every single one of their home games this year. Every single one. They've had a sellout crowd, standing room only, to see the Predators play. And they think this town has really taken to this team.
Right.
The organization itself has done a wonderful job of ingraining themselves in the community, of making themselves known, putting themselves out there. They are the hottest commodity in the city right now. Everybody, I've seen more Predators gear around than I've seen any other team really here in Nashville. It's really special to see what this organization has done in a town that when the team came, in 1998 they had to have hockey 101 classes where the announcers taught fans, how the game worked. And now now the fan base has just grown so much. It's become really, the hallmark organization of the city.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly special what they've done. They've turned this place into a huge, huge hockey market.
That's really good to hear. I think Nashville, St. Louis, and Tampa Bay, all these places are, I guess you would say non-traditional, but really thriving, and it's good to see. Want to do some rapid fire now with some of the trades that's gone through. How does that sound? So what do you think? I'm gonna give you one sentence, okay? The first one's gonna be a curveball, okay? It's gonna be a little different, but I have to ask. PK Subban for Shea Weber, one sentence.
Good trade for Nashville.
Good trade for Nashville. Bishop to the Kings.
Intriguing, but given their cap and expansion draft situations, not that, and for both teams, not that shocking. And also, I'll add this a little more of a
and also, okay, compound sentence.
I can't really answer this one in one sentence.
No problem.
Lightning did a good job of alleviating a cap situation and their salary cap situation. And the Kings, who have just gotten Jonathan Quick back from an injury, they've gotten themselves some insurance because I'm not sure how much they trust how healthy Jonathan Quick is.
Okay. Hansel to Minnesota.
The Wild are all in.
Yeah.
They are really going for it.
Number one in the power rankings on NHL.com. Minnesota's going to be one to watch. Boyle to the Leafs for a second rounder. Brian Boyle, that is, because there are a lot of Boyles.
Two points on this. Number one, it's really interesting to see that the Leafs are now a playoff win now team this year. And two, Boyle adds a really nice veteran presence to that lineup of really young players, and he'll make a good addition there.
Okay, and Burrows to the Senators.
This one is intriguing. Well, first, this one is fascinating. I think it's a strange deal for the Senators to make, and a wonderful deal to get a great prospect for the Canucks.
All right. I don't think I missed any, but I might have missed some. You never know with this league.
Those were all there was Jordy Ben from
right.
the Stars going to the Canadiens. That one is also interesting. It's a weird kind of deal. Ben's a solid guy. I mean, he's playing lower minutes on a team with not so great defense overall. But then for the Habs, I mean, they've got a lot of guys that are mixing around beneath Shea Weber and Alexei Emelin. So I mean, I don't really know what either side was kind of going for on that trade, but overall I think it's an interesting move for both sides.
Look at that! I can't even get one by you.
Nope, I got my fingers on the pulse of the hockey universe. I'm gonna have to apologize in advance to anybody I'm talking to on Wednesday, so I'm just gonna be refreshing Twitter 24/7.
Well, that's why we love you here. Anyway, I'm really sorry. You've had so far just awful luck, and it's on me on this show. Both shows were disrupted by technical difficulties, and those were really the only two shows I've had. So I don't know what it is, but we'll definitely get it right. I feel terrible about it, but
no, don't you worry. I understand technology hiccups happen sometimes. I just happen to be able to talk some New York sports and some trade deadline with you. I appreciate it.
Anyway, it was awesome. I enjoyed it, and until next time, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks so much, Gillen.
All right, thanks, Cutler.
And enjoy Fun Ball next week.
I will, absolutely. All right, that was Cutler Klein. Thank you, Cutler. And for those who don't know, Fun Ball, that's one that probably people aren't even familiar with. That's our a tradition. Me and Cutler went to the same high school, and it's a big tradition at our high school. Anyway, so once again, man, I have to say we were definitely in a groove there. I had to completely stop the podcast. There was no audio, and for this one, I'm honest when I screw up, but I don't even know. This one was like I said, the technology just didn't do what I told it to do. So that was kind of interesting. But we talked about the Knicks, who were inactive in the trade deadline, and how awful it is that Brandon Jennings and Derrick Rose are on their contract years. They obviously need to be moved. And in fairness to Phil Jackson, the Timberwolves were the one who pulled out of that trade. It was Rose for Rubio. But at the same time, Phil Jackson does not get the benefit of the doubt there. So, we talked a little bit about that. Lundqvist said that James Dolan has been, quote, the best owner. So we didn't get to that, but that's an interesting one. Dolan is a scapegoat for Knicks fans, and, Ranger fans don't talk about Dolan that much, except for the exorbitant ticket prices. Other than that, Dolan is cool with Ranger fans. So that was an interesting one that I wanted to get to, but that's all right. We went over 45 minutes in real time, under 30 minutes. I guess for this video, since we got interrupted, or just coming up on the 30-minute mark now, we'll definitely get it right with Cutler. We'll talk to him again, I'm sure, around playoff time, possibly even before then. Always a great guest. You'll never ask him a question that he's not prepared to answer. And so it's all good. We're growing. I was at WABC the other day. As some of you may have seen, I did post the audio clip of going on air on WABC. But Sid Rosenberg will be joining me soon on this show, and that is going to be a really fun one. I'll just say that now. I don't know if it's going to be next Monday. It very well could be, or one of the Mondays after that. That one's going to be unbelievable, and I can't wait. But for this one, I'll cut up highlights. Stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.